Hello and welcome back, Paxians. I'm Altari, the professional gamer, and this is another section of the Pax Dei Wilderness Alpha developer interview series that we have been running over the last couple of weeks. Last week we talked about player versus player. The week before that we talked about combat, and this week we're talking about the player versus the environment as well as exploration. We have a whole heck of a lot of stuff that we're going to be learning today, as well as a lot of really interesting gameplay footage from a couple of different areas of the game. We will be having a commentary section kind of explaining what is in the footage posted alongside this video. So if you're interested in learning more about what is actually happening in game, that video, which is linked down below as well, is something that you want to check out. But for today's episode, we are going to be talking with Peter and Solka about exploration and PvE. Next week, we are going to be covering all things to do about crafting, so that will be a really interesting one. And I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to our interviewer and interviewees. But before that, if you haven't done so, don't forget to like if you enjoy this type of content, subscribe so you can be notified when we post our next interview series, as well as all the Pax Day content that we have planned for the near and distant futures, and share this video with any of your friends who might be interested in Pax Day. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the interview. All right, well then, talking about PvE, I guess, we can kind of transition into the PvE / exploration portion of today's interview. So, the first thing, I guess, is we've seen a lot of updates coming out about dungeons and kind of that aspect and area of the gameplay. We previously also talked about how dungeons are a lot more difficult. So what is new about dungeons in game? What's kind of been added since the last time players were able to get access to it in Alpha 1?
The dungeon team is like kind of working on right now, just like kind of hardening and polishing and making the dungeons kind of the level design, like iterating on that basically. And we have a lot of really cool stuff that we want to do in dungeons, and we have so much of that content right now that we're gonna, for some of it for Alpha 2, but also just like continuously keep updating and making them kind of live up to the kind of quality and like meaningfulness that we want, like working in the ideas that we really want to like introduce there before expanding and like making like wholly different kind of dungeon content in the game, because we have a lot of kind of square footage right now to cover and make better. As in terms of like incentives to go there, like the Alpha 1 dungeons, like you said, could basically, they were like, the difficulty was not really there, that people could kind of just circuit naked, like wearing, without
Basically
any kind of, basically nothing. That is drastically changed, as I'm sure you've like painfully discovered in the current game. And there are multiple like rare enemies that you can encounter if you kind of go to any of these places and camp out in them and like look for them for long enough. Who drop these rare kind of relics that you use to craft any of the spell gear. So like any like gear with like special abilities and spells.
Yeah, so I was wondering maybe if we could talk a little bit more about that system, specifically the relics that are dropping. So, you go into a dungeon and you happen to see a rare mob. Maybe they have a nice little name, and you end up being able to kill them and they drop something. So what is that system exactly? And, in its current iteration, how much access, like how much actual variation is there in the system right now?
There's quite a lot. This is like part of the content that we're always going to be expanding on. But we picked and have been implementing like the first batch of spells and special abilities that we want for this gear, and some of these abilities appear on like 2 or 3 or 4 different types of gear in the game. And the way we picked them was like we picked the spells that actually change how you play in a group or like with other people. So they're not, yeah. So we still don't have like a huge library of like spells that just like deal a bunch of extra damage. They're more focused on like, yeah, the kind of the group dynamic flow with healing spells and crowd control and like aggro generation, like taunt effects, things like that.
And one of the things I noticed on them as well is that they have levels to them too. So is it safe to assume that the deeper you go into a dungeon, you might get access to higher tiers of the same spell as well?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very
And yeah, and the there's a, I guess we probably don't want to tell exactly how many named enemies there are. There's quite a few, and they're distributed around the world. So you actually won't be able to find all of them in any one of the single provinces. So you're actually going to have to do a lot of exploration or trading with people if you want to find the entire set of gear that we locked behind the relics.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to spoil like this meant to be part of kind of the mystery in the game. Is like, is there more stuff out there? But without spoiling too much, like if you to gain access to like at least the weakest versions of like all of these kind of fundamental kind of group spells, you wouldn't have to travel very far. But when the players have discovered like the strongest version of one of these spells, it might only be found in like 1 or 2 places in the world. So you need to go on longer excursions to try your luck.
Wow.
And actually, when you find the relics, I do recommend reading some of the descriptions, because this is one of the areas of the game currently that has the like some hints of the lore of like the origin of these relics, because there's multiple kinds, and we're probably going to expand each one of these. So actually, you might be finding some hints on the type of content we're going to be adding sometime in the future.
Very cool. So that actually kind of led perfectly into my next question with regards to like books. And I know the relics, they have their own lore descriptions on them. I'm avidly working with other players who are in the game, trying to catalog all of these things. But that's only one kind of fragment of what I feel like is going to be a lot larger system. What kind of can players expect for the kind of knowledge, or I'm just calling it the knowledge system, I don't know what you all call it internally, but that kind of book related system, and where do relics fit into that? Is this kind of the first iteration of that system, or is it a completely different system?
Yes.
Oh, I knew I was going to get that one.
Okay. There will be books in the future, and we have a lot of stuff that I would love to talk about them right now, but I think I want to save it.
Okay. Yeah, and with the books, I think the primary reason we haven't been adding them yet is that because we do want the books to have a lore component to them, but we probably also want to have a functional component to them, and we just haven't had the bandwidth to do the functional component yet.
It's more the functional component that I kind of want to save a little bit, but something we're really excited about.
Cool. Well, I'm excited as well. So in regards to kind of lore, since we're kind of on that topic still, one of the primary things that got a lot of people, myself included, super excited about Pax Dei is the idea that lore ties into gameplay. And, we don't have NPCs feeding us quests that, go collect this because I'm the Baron of this land and I want all of the pigs dead. It's like there is a lore component that feeds us into going on these adventures or exploring the deepest, darkest places of the world. Is that system something that exists in game right now? Like, should players be reading some of these texts and, it leads them on a path right now? Or is that something that is kind of planned for a future iteration of the game?
So all of the entities you'll find in the game, like you say, they're not like quest givers. You don't have conversations with them, but all of them have like a very grounded, like they're all grounded in the lore, like where they come from, what their purpose is, what their mission is, what drives them, things like that. Some of it can be gleaned from descriptions you can find in the game right now. some of it can be gleaned from like dev blogs that are like intermittently posted. We will like we're gonna lean more and more into like giving that like more and more of that context in the game for people to kind of discover, especially people who are like actually go and like research and like find clues in the world about it. And sometimes that might actually lead people to discovering like actually some functioning things in the world.
The relic types you find from each one of the enemies obviously part of this as well, where you're going to be getting different types of thing from a named animal than a named NPC.
Very cool. Yeah, one of the named NPCs that I was able to find actually was a NPC named Gatekeeper Montel. That's actually one of, I think, the first blog posts that you all made about lore was about this Gatekeeper Montel who was paving the way for a duke, I think. So is that kind of, do all of these named NPCs, is that something that like there is actual lore behind all of them and it's just something that players haven't had access to yet? And is that something that we can expect in the future?
To a varying degree, yes. Like all of them have like some selection of them have like you know, a very strong purpose in the background lore and the kind of the lore that players just don't have access to yet, or we haven't like shared enough yet, either in game or out of game. And all of the rest of them are like, you know, follow that, or at least fit into that.
Cool. Now, when I found him, and this will lead into another question, when I did find him, he was surrounded by a lot of Hellions. I almost expected, because I recognized the name, that there was going to be maybe some more unique fight mechanics. I fortunately was able to kill him, which involved a lot of CCing on the Hellions and all of that. But there was no real, like, he just came and packed a heavy punch on us. Is there plans in the future for bosses or named mobs like this to have special abilities, or maybe even things like he did? I don't think I've crafted something with the relic that he dropped yet, but will there be kind of clues as to what type of spell this boss might drop based on kind of their abilities? And what's kind of the plans for bosses in the future to make those fights a little bit more dynamic and interesting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. For like the first part of the question, which is like his actual mechanics and behavior and abilities and whatnot, that is just honestly just something we haven't gotten to enough yet. Like all of these rare spawns are tough. Like they are always tougher than the things in their area. And we've just started like kind of working on like some of the plans to like make some of them stand out more, both visually and functionally. But that's something we're working on over time. That is definitely the and that can range from like them just having like different stats. So like they have like some like vulnerabilities that you just need to figure out, like vulnerabilities to certain types of damage, to like a fully fledged kind of like mini boss fight where they have like unique spells and abilities that you need to figure out how to counter.
Yeah, no, the PvE system, the like part of the expanding the capabilities what the players can do actually has been to also like reflect these abilities on the NPCs. So if a player can cast a spell, like you can expect probably to find an NPC who can do the same thing.
Very cool. Very cool. So I know we said mini bosses. I guess a follow-up question: are there any actual bosses that exist, maybe at the bottom of a dungeon or something like that in Alpha 2, or is that something maybe that we need to wait for a little bit longer?
For Alpha 2, the ones you find are these kind of rare spawns. You'll have to wait a little longer for the other kind.
Okay, very cool.
But even some of the hardest ones right now for the rare spawns, I'm really curious to see when players can actually beat them. They're tough. Let's just put it that way.
And
Yeah.
I guess another question too, in regards to these rare spawns, are there like loot tables that exist in games? So if I go and kill one of these rare spawns that it's taken a long time for me to go and actually find them, are there loot tables that exist? So maybe if I kill them one time, they'll drop something different than if I kill them multiple times. And I'm more so thinking in terms of relics right now. Like, will there be tiers of drops where I might have to go and farm a certain mob or something like that?
That's the intent right now, as far as I recall. Like the rare spawns have, we have a lot of them, and their loot table, while it is randomized, it's still very predictable. So at the moment in the game, if you discover that like a certain rare NPC drops a relic, it will do so predictably. But as we expand the content and as we expand more kind of more special gear that you can get from enemies, some of it is gonna be more or less common than others. And yeah, so in some cases, if there's like a very highly desired item that you want, it still means that you might need to go and like farm that rare NPC.
Very cool. Now I'm gonna transition a little bit in terms of right now. A lot of the experiences in dungeons have been as individual groups or maybe a larger group going through. Where do you see the gameplay dynamics going when we have thousands of players in the world all at once, and you could have multiple groups going through these dungeons? Is there any plan for like protecting my loot table? In other words, if I go and kill the boss and there's just a random rogue player hiding somewhere, what's to stop them from just going and picking up my
there's
my
like a two-part answer to that. Like one is like on the basically ninja looting. That's something we haven't we fully intend to like not have like ninja looting in the game. I'm still not certain if that's going to make it for Alpha 2, but that's going to be there. So basically the group or the player or the group that is basically dealt the most damage to an NPC since it last kind of reset is the kind of owner of then the loot for some time period. That is fully in the intent, and if we don't manage to get it in for Alpha 2, we'll communicate that that's where we're going. Okay. The other part of the question is kind of how we dynamically instantiate zones. So like if there is a dungeon that, because of how the meta evolves and whatever, that has just a lot of like highly desired items, and like every night there are like hundreds of people or even 1,000 people that want to be camping out there. We kind of dynamically instantiate zones that get overpopulated. So we don't ever like have a group of players. We create like a private instance for them. You're always going to be able, like, you should always expect that you might find other people in the area you're going to, both like overworld and dungeons. But there's like a limit to like how many people we put into that zone before we like spot a new instance of it, so it doesn't feel overpopulated.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. And then now kind of moving away from the dungeon side of things, in terms of how players are able to traverse the world, what has changed in terms of Alpha 1 to Alpha 2, and is there any future changes that we can expect down the line as well with kind of traversing the world?
So probably the biggest change in just the word Traversal is just as part of developing the game, we've been putting a lot of effort into creating this pipeline that we're using to author the world that you're experiencing, and the world team putting a lot of effort in actually improving the pipeline for the world that we have in build currently. And part of that was the like revamping the road system. So the roads actually make a lot more sense in Alpha 2 than they did in Alpha 1, and they basically should be traversable, and the paths that they take make a lot more sense. So actually, like moving around the world is actually feels more natural now. But in for new means of travel, like you're still going to be walking quite a lot in Alpha 2, so there's no new ways to travel fast.
And
no mounts just yet.
Yeah,
to wait a bit longer for that.
That kind of is where I was going with this question too, because I noticed on the loading screen there's the faint sound of some hooves clopping in the background. Is that a tease for something coming in the future?
It might be a tease.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I had to ask. Is there, if you had to put a date on when we'd hear more about that, it'd be
I guess
maybe
we
if
can't
I
put
just
the date, but yeah, I mean the mounts is it's one of the coolest features you can have in MMO. So of course, like we just like want to have it, and we have some like really cool stuff baking on that too. It's just a question of like getting all of the gameplay system we have into a good, robust state, so we can actually like add, like find the capacity to work in that. So
cool. Well, yes, thank you for answering that. And then, in just regards to, because I feel like mounts will free up players' desire to teleport everywhere. Has something changed in terms of the teleportation system in game? And I know we have 8 dials, but right now I only have one option, which is, teleport to the nearest shrine. What is kind of the plan for teleportation in the game, kind of as a stopgap for mounts?
Yeah, I mean, what you're experiencing in Friends and Family right now is essentially what you'll have in Alpha 2 for that feature. We of course want to get mounts into the game as soon as we can. We just want to do them really well, because they will change a lot how the game is played and how kind of people traverse and the kind of the size of the world, and kind of the overarching, I guess, comment on like fast travel is just we want to be extremely cautious if and whenever we like add any kind of like fast travel means to the game, because even if they address some issues that like we think are good for the players and players want, they always have like a very like they can always have like a very bad kind of downside that takes a really long time to kind of understand and appreciate what you kind of lost when you do it, because so much of this game is, so much of Pax Dei is, or like the magic of Pax Dei is like, is this world that you live in, and that it's its kind of scope and how gorgeous it is, and like how satisfying we want it to be kind of exploring, and that location matters. It actually matters where you build your village or where you set up your like hunting cabin. So yeah, we just overall we just want to be really cautious about adding fast travel options, because they would always kind of drastically kind of reduce the size of the world and make those meaningful things matter less.
Cool. Yeah, that thank you for answering that. And I know a lot of players want teleportation because it makes things move a lot quicker in some ways, but at the same time I feel like for a game like Pax Dei, where everything in the world can lead on a different adventure, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So if you teleport past all of that potential gameplay, then it kind of loses the effect, and it can make the world almost seem empty, I feel like, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we won't introduce those options. So I'm just saying like we want to be really careful when we do, and be like, because it's very hard to take it away once you have that as a player. I guess the one area where I feel like really confident that we need an option for is like when you just need to leave, like for real life reasons or whatever. You just need to end your session, go make dinner or whatever. Like, so being able to like fast travel home or like back to your heartland, I think it's really, really important, no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, so you don't get abandoned by the rest of your clanmates or at the bottom of a dungeon.
You got disconnected in a dungeon, and you wake up tomorrow morning, and there's nobody there to help you get out. And
yeah, that would very much so needed. All right, and here we are, Paxians, back yet again for the end of another interview section. Don't forget that April 15th is the last day that you can apply to be in the Pax Dei Wilderness Alpha. The invites are going to be going out on April 23rd. 100,000 players are going to be getting invitations on that day. It is going to be a very exciting time. We are definitely going to be live streaming during that day as well, in kind of a celebration. And we have some fun events planned towards the end of the alpha. And it's just going to be a really great time that entire last week of April. So make sure, if you haven't done so already, to like this video if you enjoy this type of content, subscribe so that you can get notified whenever we post new stuff, and share with any of your friends who might be interested in learning a little bit more about Pax Dei. Until the next video, I'm Altari, the Professional Gamer.